Let's move on now to the Los Angeles Chargers free agency review. But before we do that, this is our final series of the 2023 free agency portion of the offseason before we pivot to start previewing the 2023 season, which includes player breakdowns, prediction videos, division winners, game predictions for each week. So if you want to see a lot more Chargers content, Chargers game prediction, be sure to subscribe to the channel and ring the bell to get notified when new content is released. Ryan, that being said, let's get into it here.
Let's do it.
Chargers didn't have too much action going into or just throughout this offseason, little cap space, and also really focus more on just re-signing some key players and then also focusing on just getting better in the draft, which I think in general, all things considered, they did okay in. One of their biggest additions just through free agency was they did kind of help beef up that linebacking core, which I thought was in some need because, frankly, honestly, the secondary and the front line is really good and has some good depth. But the middle part maybe could have gotten a little weak and that lacked a little depth. But signing Erik Hendricks to a 2-year deal, I think is going to help out a lot. In general, though, their main additions were through the draft.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think you look at the offensive side of the ball, and we'll get into the depth chart here shortly. And they added some pretty solid weapons, right? Added good offensive line depth, and yeah, I like what they were able to do in this draft. So let's just go ahead and get right into it. So starting off on the depth chart, Quentin Johnston, the wide receiver from TCU, the big first-round pick wide receiver. Mm-hmm. I think this is a really interesting signing. I think when leading up to this process, we talked about he needed to go to a place where he's not immediately going to be the feature wide receiver. And he's not immediately the feature wide receiver here, right? He's the wide receiver 2 or 3 in this offense. So he's going to have time to learn and develop and understand more complex route schemes and offensive schemes as a whole.
Yeah.
Before he's really asked to be that true number 1 wide receiver that he has the potential and the physical traits to be. So I think that's a really interesting one there. Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, as always, I think will be really solid. And one of the big things I didn't understand about this offseason was everyone was saying that the Chargers needed to address their offensive line. And the only reason why it was so bad was because literally everybody was hurt.
Yeah.
Corey Linsley was hurt, Rashawn Slater was hurt, and Trey Pipkins got hurt as well. So that to me, I think just getting those guys back from injury, this offense will be a lot better.
I can see the argument behind what people were saying is like just add depth, and I agree with. Yeah. And I agree, like you could always add depth, but just Chargers were kind of handcuffed coming into with adding depth, good depth pieces, and then they did address a little bit in the draft as well, and then also through the unrestricted free agency section also. But in general, they did need to add a receiver just because before going into this draft, they only had 5 or 6 receivers, I think, that were on the books. And so going into the draft at least. And so actually it might have even been 5. And so from here, then also the tight end position, I think is fine. It is what it is. It's serviceable. They primarily honestly use the receivers and then also use Austin Eckler as well. Who's going to be getting a majority of their touches. And so offensively, I like the addition of Quentin Johnston. I think he does add more depth and skill to that room, like elite level and skill. This offense still, has all the potential, I think, to be one of the top offenses if they're not already one of the top offenses. I think the biggest addition you can make an argument for, though, is a guy who will never play or put pads on, but it's going to be who's calling the plays. It's offensive coordinator Kellen Moore. I really like him. I thought that I think it's good that he got out of Dallas. Let's put it that way. So I think he has a unique opportunity here because with his creative mind, I also think Brandon Staley, for all the faults that we have,
he's a good offensive coordinator and he calls good plays.
He's very creative. He's just horrible game management.
Yeah, exactly. And he's very over aggressive. I think maybe Kellen Moore gets in there. Maybe it takes that analytics out of Brandon Staley and is like, all right, I understand we have a 60% chance of converting this 4th and 5, but we have a 98% chance of putting 3 points on the board if we kick this field goal.
Yeah.
Especially
when you got Dicker the kicker.
Yeah, exactly. So let's get into this defense now. And
actually, is he still on that team? Yes, he is. All right. Perfect.
Yeah, he is. Cameron Dicker. I mean, I think you look, and this defense is built for modern day football, right? You have some really solid corners, Asante Samuel Jr., J.C. Jackson, Derwin James is extremely solid. And then you have elite pass rushers in Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack. Where they get beat is when they play teams that run the ball really well up the middle. As you said, they signed Erik Hendricks, who should definitely help with that. Dian Henley was a draft pick that I really like as well. And then Tuli Pelotu, I think, is an underrated signing or underrated draft pick because he is really good against the run, and he kind of plays more of that like 3 technique, 3-4 3-4 edge, and is really solid against the run. So they're definitely taking steps to kind of fix that.
Yeah, they just need that to be because they just need that to be serviceable. Because you're right, that is absolutely their Achilles heel. If they could be even if they're like top 20, or maybe close to 20th in the run defense, the pass game is normally on lockdown, and so a combination, I think, of all the additions, especially the little tiny ones, going all the way to Kellen Moore on offense, to then getting Tuli and Dian Henley as well. On the defensive side of the ball to help kind of with the run. Even though I think I say that though, Dian Henley definitely doesn't fit the normal run pass linebacking. He's definitely a speedy, speedy.
He's a sideline to sideline guy, but he's still like 238, I believe, or he's like 235. And so like he's still pretty big for a sideline to sideline guy, and was actually a lot of people thought he was the best linebacker in this class. So. I think he will definitely help there. So all in all, I really like what they've done. I think they've put themselves in prime position to compete with Kansas City for this division. And so let's go ahead and get into what we think a successful season would look like for the Los Angeles Chargers. And for me, I mean, they need to get to the playoffs and be competitive, right? I think you look at the track that the Bengals are on right now, and the Chargers are very much they've made a lot of the same moves, right? Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow drafted in the same quarterback class. Brendan Staley, Zach Taylor, they've been head coaches for the same amount of time. They have really solid receiving groups. I think maybe Cincinnati's defense is a little better. Just they're a lot better and more stout against the run. Which makes offenses a little bit more one-dimensional. But one of those teams has gone on to Super Bowl, and the other one has yet to win a playoff game. And so I think getting to the playoffs and being competitive in the playoffs and not blowing a huge lead again is what this team needs to do. I think they could potentially win this division this year. So it'll just be interesting to see what they can pull together.
Well, and I think that's a great point, because no one would be shocked if this team won the division. So that's where it's like no one would be shocked. And obviously, then when you say that, Super Bowl is obviously the end goal, and that's obviously the most successful season. But if we're being realistic, though, I think getting to the divisional round and being competitive with these top AFC teams, because let's go look at the 4 teams that made the divisional round there: the Chiefs, Bengals, Bills, and then Jacksonville Jaguars. They should have beat the Jags, yes, but now the Jags I think have that confidence that I think that they are one of the top 4 teams or top 5 teams in the AFC, and the Chargers need to be they need to be a part of that conversation, and to do that, you have to get to the divisional round. Teams were talking about that with the Browns after their first year and how many years of winning a playoff game, when they barely lost to the Chiefs in the divisional round. It's like, oh, this is like one of the top 4 teams in the league. And then they go and do Cleveland Brown things. The Chargers need to have that season like that where they barely lose or win in Arrowhead, but then keep following that up, because you look at the talent on the paper that's on paper of the depth chart that we just saw. They're really good. They're really good. They just need to put it together.
Yeah, exactly. And so hopefully some of the additions that they made, both on the field and in the coaching staff, I think can kind of propel this team to over that proverbial hump that everybody talks about. So I think that's going to wrap up this episode of the Tracy Take. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and like and subscribe, and leave a comment down below on what your favorite offseason edition was for the Los Coast Chargers? Was it a draftee? Was it a free agent signing? Let us know down below. Other than that, we will see you guys next time.